Okay, so we're going to go for a lockdown walk. I'm a prolific walker, and during lockdown I've been going on lots of long walks and learning about my local area. So today's walk, we're going to go from somewhere quite close to my house to Eltham Palace. So it's about a half-hour walk, and we're going to pass some nice sights on the way, which I'll probably stop and show you. So we're going to start here. This is College Meadow. It's Elthamium's rugby club and cricket club just over there. It's all locked up at the moment, as you can see. This is where my son would be playing cricket right now if the season had gone ahead, which it hasn't, sadly. Next year, hopefully. So we'll start here, and we're going to walk down this little path here, and you can just hear the bird song in the background, and you can hear the river that's just down here as well. That's the Quaggy. It runs through southeast London. So we'll start here, and I'll stop again soon and show you some of the sights. So right now we're at the back of Eltham College. You can see the Eltham College grounds there. That's where my son does his swimming on a Saturday morning. They've got a really nice pool. Now, Eltham College has had many notable students, but one of whom is Mervyn Peake, who wrote the Gormenghast series of books, which I really enjoyed. So if, like me, you're a writer and you enjoy fantasy novels, it's a really good series to sink your teeth into. So we're actually on the King John Walk now. I'm going to tell you a little bit later why it's called the King John Walk. But first of all, these are the horses here that are part of Mottingham Riding Stables, which is just up there, over on the hill. And she's a really nice lady and takes in a lot of rescue horses. She's mainly volunteer work, and she also gives out free manure for people who garden in the area, like me. So these are the horses that are providing that manure for my garden. So I always stop by and see them just to say hello whenever I do this walk. It's really quite sweet, isn't it? You can hear more traffic here, and that's because just behind these trees is the A20, which then becomes the M20, which then, after it's been through the channel, becomes the A1 that takes you to Paris. It's a long-running joke in my family that I can actually drive to Paris quicker than I can drive home to Newcastle. So I'm talking a bit louder because this is that road to Paris I was talking about, or the road south, I should say. Now, sadly today we're not going to Paris, everything's closed, but we are going to carry on up here, which again is the King John Walk, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment, I promise. Okay, I've stopped here for a reason, and it's because there's this gate here, and I call it the gate to nowhere because, as you can see, it's a gate that's been built. It's obviously built for a purpose, but it's completely closed up now by wilderness. There's a felled tree just here, and there's the gate again. And I have this plan after I've finished writing my current manuscript, which is about 30,000 words to go now, to write a book called The Gate to Nowhere, which is about a missing heiress. And that's the next sort of plan after this current manuscript is finished. And I've kind of got the outline already done, and it's more of a historical suspense novel. So I'm kind of looking forward to sinking my teeth into that one because I've never tried that genre before. Anyway, here's the inspiration for that, The Gate to Nowhere. Okay, I've stopped here because these are the old Blackheath ride donkeys. This is where they live now. It's a really nice little patch of grass. Hi, this one's coming to say hello to us. Really lovely patch of grass just up at Eltham. And as you can see today, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 donkeys just in this corner here. They have all got names. They're written on a little... I can see he's coming up to say hello. He wants my carrots. I haven't brought the carrots today, or the kids, to be honest. I generally bring my kids here and we feed them carrots or parsnips or things like that. That is allowed, by the way. They do have an empty bucket for the wrappings and things. So as you can see, there's more in the corner down there. And again, this is just one of those little surprises that you find in southeast London. All these lovely creatures, all these lovely animals sort of just hidden away. And you wouldn't know this was here unless someone had told you about it. But it's just nice to come and say hi to them, and they're really friendly because they're so used to people feeding them and patting them. Which is why they come quite close to the fences so they can say hello to people. This one's given up. He's realised I've got no carrots today, so he's sort of walking away in a huff now. Next time I come, I promise I'll bring you some. I promise. Now I've stopped here because from here you can see London. And it's actually a really clear day today, so you can see everything quite clearly. So over there you can just see the tops of the O2 Arena. There you can see Canary Wharf, and then moving on, I'll try and zoom in. I'm not very good on this camera, to be honest with you. There we go. Okay. You can see the Shard, you can see the Gherkin, you can see the Millennium Wheel, You can see the BT tower just there. So I don't normally come in this field, I normally carry on walking, but it's such a lovely day today. It's so warm, it's so quiet. I mean, this is London, and look at the skies above us. There's not a single aeroplane, it's crazy. I mean, normally this area of London is under one of the 4 landing paths for Heathrow, and it's a plane every 30 seconds, and for this, the skies to be so quiet, I mean, it's honestly just insane. I can't get over how quiet it is, how loud the bird song is, how empty everything feels. It's just insane, it's honestly quiet. So this is the King John Walk I was talking about earlier. We're back on that path again. Now it's called the King John Walk because in 1356 King Jean Le Bon of France was held at Eltham Palace as prisoner after his defeat at Poitiers by the Black Prince. So although he was a prisoner, he actually had free reign of the estate because he was royalty and he was probably closely related to the family in the UK. So he was treated as an honoured guest more than a prisoner. So the horses here are actually part of Eltham Palace stables. There's one running there. They're actually part of Eltham Palace stables, which is just next to us. And it's just, again, one of those lovely things that you find in London. So many hidden surprises in this city. Anyone who's read A Game of Desire will know how much I love London. A Game of Desire was set in Borough, and that area is just where the Shard is over there now. And it's been nearly 2 months since I've been into the city, which is crazy because I normally go more than a few days without going into the city because I just love being in London and its surrounding areas so much. Okay, so we've reached Eltham Palace. There's the original 15th century bridge, and you can see skirting around the grounds is the moat. Now the original palace itself is actually gone, and instead there's this Art Deco masterpiece of a mansion that was built by the Courtaulds in the 1930s, and it's so beautiful inside. It's immaculate, and they've left it as it was from the 1930s, and it's like stepping into a time capsule almost. There's a nice local connection for the northeast where I'm from for this area, in that this land and this castle, or palace as it was back then, was actually gifted to Edward II by the Bishop of Durham. So again, it's that little nice northern connection that I quite like about this place, and again it makes it feel more like home for me. I think London's one of those cities where you have to make it feel like home for yourself. You have to find those connections to you and to your past and then apply it, and then it just feels more like a glove that fits you almost, which is just the wonderful thing about London, that anyone can actually come here and make it a home. So Henry VIII spent most of his childhood here. He was schooled here. Elizabeth I spent some of her childhood here as well. And the air was supposed to be quite fresh, and I'm saying that with a little bit of a laugh because obviously this is London. This is quite heavily built up southeast London now, and the air isn't always fresh. This is about the freshest I've ever seen it, in fact, with no aeroplanes and no traffic and no cars. So the air out here was considered quite fresh, and the walk we've just done from my home to here, that would have all been hunting grounds originally for the royal family. So this was the palace that they used as their base for using those hunting grounds. It was also famous for jousts here. There is actually a working tilt yard still here. I'm saying working, they've left the tilt yard as it would have been during the Tudor period. And there's a cafe there as well, which one day I keep meaning to come to and sit and write in. I one day will come back and write in that cafe. And you can just see the building there as well. You can't see the chapel. I think you can just, or maybe you can just see the chapel behind the trees there. Obviously it's all locked up by English heritage, so it's not open at the moment. But one day when it is open again, I'll come back and have a good walk through. You can see the parakeets. Another home connection, so obviously parakeets are Australian, kind of taken over in this area. So normally this would be the end of the walk, but there's one more thing I'm going to show you, which is again a local connection for me for home. I just want to show you this. This is the entrance to the tilt yards, the jousting courts at Eltham Palace, just there. And the green chain walk does carry on around that road, but that goes to the Thames Barrier, and I'm not walking all the way to the Thames Barrier today. I hate to say this, it's a 5-mile walk. I would never get back in the hour that you get allocated for exercise. So one more thing to show you, and then I'll sign off. There's one more thing I want to show you, and it's in here. This is Diocese of Southwark. This is Elton Parish Church of St John the Baptist, and yes, it's in the churchyard. And it's actually something really, really special. Something really personal to me. As you can see, it's just a basic churchyard, typical church. Lots of traffic outside, we're in Elton proper now. If you walk along here, and I can hear it as I'm saying it here, I said it like a real Australian. Because obviously I was born in Australia, I was brought up in Australia, to British parents, yes, but still lots of Australian history. And if you just keep coming along here, ignoring all the buses, ignoring all the cars, we're going to come to this grave here. So this is the gravestone of Ibbotson, who was an Australian Aboriginal. Now he came to the UK in, I think, I'm going to try and remember my history, in I think 1792, 93, and he came with Governor Arthur Phillip, who was from Kent, and he was one of the 2 Aboriginals brought back from Australia to show the then king the natives of this new land they'd colonised. And so Ibbotson, he was just a boy when he was brought over. He'd suffered through terrible, terrible colonisation of his people. Smallpox was unleashed upon them, and 96.8% of his people died within the first 2 years of colonisation. You can hear the church bells behind me. Anyway, he was brought over to the UK, and he and Benelong, who was the other Aboriginal he travelled with, who Benelong Point, where the harbour bridge is, and the Opera House is named for in Sydney, they were brought over here, presented to the king, and promised passage home. And the passage home just never materialised. For one way or another, they kept begging to go home, and they kept being told no, or being given excuses as to why they couldn't return home. And of course, Ibbotson unfortunately became very, very sick when he was here. He was not used to the diseases that were rampant in Europe at the time. He became very, very sick and sadly died here, and he was buried in this churchyard. So somewhere in here, you can probably imagine, he was buried in this churchyard at the cost of Governor Arthur Phillip. Now what's happened is, sadly, they don't know where his remains lie. Because he is of the Aboriginal people, he shouldn't be lying in a British churchyard in London. He should be at home in Australian soil. But sadly, through the passage of time, they've lost track of where his remains are. And so, this is what's left of him, this gravestone here. And occasionally I come here, maybe once every, I'd say 4 months, and I tidy up around the grave. So I'm going to do it next, actually. You can see someone's put some rubbish down the side there, and there's a McDonald's across the road, and sometimes people put their McDonald's rubbish on here as well, and I give it a tidy up and I weed around it, and in general just make sure it's looking okay. So I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to sign off. It's been lovely taking you for this walk. I'm sorry, actually it was longer than I thought it was going to be. I mean, I say it's a half-hour walk, but there's just so much to see on the way. Such a nice part of the city. Anyway, it's been lovely having you along with me, and hopefully I can do another one soon. Maybe I'll walk all the way to the Thames Barrier one day. You never ever know.